Line number 7. Say good morning to the Liberal member of the House of Assembly for Mount Pearl South, Paul Lane. Good morning, Paul. You're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy. How are you this morning?
Fine today. How about you?
I'm just great, Paddy. Paddy, I wanted to call today about an issue which I've raised now several times in the House of Assembly. In question period, I've presented petitions on a number of occasions, and that relates to the blue zone parking regulations, which were adopted by unanimously in the House of Assembly 2 years ago. And Paddy, there was an initiative, by the way, that took place, which was covered in the media a couple of weeks back between the RNC and COD-NL, and basically the RNC went out targeting blue zones and people who were parking illegally, and I think that's a great thing for sure, and I'd like to see more of it. But the issue that I want to speak about is the fact that 2 years ago we passed regulations in the House of Assembly around blue zone parking. And what those regulations basically were about was that it set the requirements for commercial establishments and so on to have, and public buildings, to have blue zone parking, and so to have the proper amount of them, to have them properly located, proper widths, and to have permanent signage in place for each and every blue zone space. And the problem we have is that even though it's been 2 years, or I think over 2 years now, we're still seeing non-compliance all throughout certainly this region and all throughout the province on the commercial side of things. And not only that, but shamefully so, we're actually seeing it in the government's own facilities. And I'm talking about places like the Health Science Centre, St. Clair's, Workers' Comp Building, Newfoundland Labrador Housing, and the list goes on, of government-owned and operated buildings and so on that are not even compliant with their own regulations.
Yeah, so, is this a government problem or is this the problem of the people? I think the blame lays squarely on people who park in the zones, not the government, about signage or anything else. If there's a little tiny blue sign with a wheelchair on it and or paint on the ground, don't park there.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, but you're confusing the issue here now.
Oh.
That's one issue that the RNC has been enforcing, and you're right, people are the problem there, and they should be prosecuted, absolutely. The issue what I'm talking about, Paddy, is that there were regulations put in place, new regulations, right, that for all businesses to actually have the blue zones,
yep,
and to have permanent signage in place for each and every space.
Okay.
And there are many, many businesses which are not in compliance with the new regulations that were put in place 2 years ago, and the provincial government, who are responsible with their inspectors for going around and enforcing this and making sure the businesses have this is not being enforced adequately. And in addition to that, we have government-owned facilities, like I said,
okay,
such as the hospitals, that don't even have them in place properly by their own regulations. So they're not even in compliance with their own regulations.
Well, and that's a problem. So the issue is not only they're not following along, but we need government to follow up to ensure that the regulations are being adhered to, period.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And currently that's not happening adequately, like I said, in terms of the businesses, but also in their own government-owned facilities. They're not even following their own rules. And this is about providing access for people with disabilities. That's why we have it there. There's obviously a need and a requirement. So I'm calling upon the Minister of Service NL to step up the enforcement with his officials, to get out there and to make sure that all properties are in compliance so that we can provide access, and also to, get in contact with his own colleagues, his own ministers responsible for their various government-owned buildings and so on, and to get our own buildings up to compliance for people who require these spaces.
Yeah, I think we're all in favor of that. It's just unbelievable that we've got to go to such great lengths and endure any such associated costs to keep people out of the blue zones. I mean, it's one thing when the 75-year-old parks at the end of a fire lane waiting for the missus to come out with supper at the grocery store. We know they shouldn't do it. I don't come unglued about it. But when people who are able-bodied and willfully just because they're too lazy to park at any distance from the door, they pull into a handicap zone. It's disgraceful. I mean, it's truly disgraceful.
It's
anyway.
Absolutely disgraceful, Paddy, and what I encourage people to do, certainly, in that case, which is a separate issue but very much related, as you say, if people see that, they can actually, and I know people sometimes don't want to get involved, but for something like that, they should get involved. They can actually write down the license plate number of the car involved, and they can call the RNC, and a ticket can be issued on their behalf. Now, granted, they may have to go to traffic court as a witness and so on, but, I mean, to my mind, that's one of the worst offenses, the worst parking offenses for sure, that somebody can do is to park at a blue zone. But that being said, we can't. The issue here is that we don't have the blue zones where we should have them, or we have them but they're not properly marked, and that falls squarely on the shoulders of the provincial government to enforce its own regulations, and for God's sakes, put them in our own government buildings properly.
I think that's okay. I can back you up on that one, because if we're going to have a regulation, if it's not enforced, it's absolutely meaningless and worthless. Appreciate your time, Paul.
Not a problem, Paddy. You have a good day.
Same to you.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.